Thank you very much. Teşekkür ederim. Nasılsın?
Çok iyiyim. Teşekkür ederim. Sen nasılsın?
Ben de iyiyim. That was my Turkish. That was everything. Just saying hello. And by the way, for everybody who has been watching, please use the opportunity to ask questions to Onur. At the bottom, you have a field where you can enter your questions, and I will get them right here in Berlin. First question from my side. Onur, what was the most daring experiment you've ever done?
Daring. There are so many. There are so many. So some experiments take years and years and years and years to finish. And in some of them, you need new systems to work on. So I give you just one example. So I'm working with all kinds of different animals. So pigeons, humans, crocodiles, etc. So for example, when we take the pigeons, we record from single neurons, and these are these incredibly thin little electrodes in their brains, while these animals bump within an hour thousands of times against a packing key. And there in this bumping head, there is this little electrode. It took years to establish the method with help of colleagues to finally record stable from single neurons. And you know, these are years, and this is daring, and it takes such a toll from everybody. But in the end, we were successful. So there are many examples like this. And that's the beauty of science, that you can do this and at the same time a little bit of the others. So if you all put your eggs in one basket, it might be difficult. Try to do a few things in parallel, because then there is always something that works.
What was the lowest moment of your career?
When I was close to be unemployed, so where everything didn't work, everything was rejected, and there I was with 2 kids and a beautiful lady on my side, and well, I said, what should I do now? But then there was a new way opened, and everything went on. That was a low moment. And there are low moments when you are so proud of a paper, so unbelievably proud. And then you get the reviews. Oh, it feels so terrible when they say, this is, well, they don't say this is nonsense, but they say something in this direction. This feels very low. Yes, sometimes you have the feeling of standing naked on a marketplace and everybody's throwing dirt at you. But then there are other moments where you suddenly realize it worked. Yeah, it's low and it's high.
Okay, we got some first questions here from the students, from the viewers. And by the way, anybody who has a question, you can type them at the bottom of your webcast window. First question here. Okay, Onur, you're talking to us about the long-term focus. Good science does take time. Your pigeons, it took years until you could single out the neurons. But then at the same time, now there's so much pressure to publish. How do I balance these two out?
That's an excellent question. So, and I think this goes back to me as the person who is responsible for quite a number of young people. When you design a PhD project, you should always have fallback positions. That's number one, because you never know whether it works or not. You should always also have short-term goals, and you should always have interactions within the lab and beyond. Because if everything failed by contributing to the research of others, there at least can be co-authorships. So we should usually define something that is challenging and big, and at the same time something that should not, falter, that should work. Usually that goes on fine. And this is at least my habit. I never let a PhD student who was hardworking and willing and did whatever he or she could go without at least some papers where in good journals something was published that is valuable to publish. We tried to end up in big journals, but it never completely worked in this case. But there is a decent outcome for this young person. That's what I try to establish.
So what I hear from you is if you have a genuine topic that's valuable and you really put the effort in, there will be some paper at some point. You will never just end up at zero. Next question we got
Usually,
here
yes.
is more in the direction of equal opportunity. And I know I believe you once did a study whether women can park cars as competently or more or less competently than men. The question we got here is, do young female scientists have to work harder in order to achieve success?
I don't think so. Women are as smart as men. And if both are hardworking, and I see them both hardworking in my lab, I don't think that they have to work harder. And I think there is a cultural change now. And it was long overdue, this change. That women, but also people with diversity backgrounds of different kinds, are regarded as an extremely valuable part of a scientific society. And their job and their life was much more difficult than before. I don't see it in that extreme now. But sometimes what I feel is that the advice, the career talks that I'm conducting with my people regularly go in different directions in between genders. So maybe this is a very primitive observation on my side, but at least the alternative of something to science comes on the table more often with female scientists. And that makes me a bit sad, because I think, why is this brilliant young lady talking about the option of leaving science? As I said, there is nothing bad with a plan B, absolutely nothing. We all should have a plan B, males and females. But it comes more often in the mind of female scientists, at least in my experience. And I think this is still something that we have to work on. We all have to have a plan B, irrespective of gender.
You just mentioned diversity, a personal question. You have a migration background in your family history, Turkey. You also have a disability. In what way may these features have shaped your scientific career?
Well, I wanted to become a paleontologist, but then I realized that with my wheelchair, it's a bit difficult to stroll around rocks and dig out some bones. So I had to turn to something else. And I'm also, to some extent, doing field research, and it's challenging. But I have to tell you that if you really have foresight and plan things well, practically nothing can be in your way. Still, I couldn't be a paleontologist, and still I couldn't be a mountaineer, no doubt about that. But with some exceptions, I think I could do well in most of science. But that said, when I started to study, there was practically no university, at least in Germany. The United States were ahead in those times by far. There was practically no university in Germany that was handicapped friendly. So it was incredibly difficult to go to the library. It was incredibly difficult to enter some of these lecture halls, etc., etc. So you have to plan double the length of time for everything. That takes away time. But it worked. But it was much more difficult in those days. And I think that's very good, that we become a much more humane society, thinking about all that.
We got a question here from our viewers, and the question is, why is there a phrenology sculpture in the background, Onur?
Because I love it. I'm not a phrenologist, obviously. How could I? Although neuropsychologists with their fMRI systems are sometimes accused to create some sort of a new phrenology, which in some publications may apply, in the majority it doesn't. But I saw it, I loved it, and I bought it. There are many more gadgets here. If you would look around in my office, it's more a toy shop with everything, with skulls and strange statues. So I think I'm pretty childish.
Next time we might have to set up a 360-degree camera as we
You
visit.
would be astonished what to see.
Now, the topic of your talk is passion for science, passion of science. One question has reached us here, and that's, what if, or no, what if I lose my passion for science?
Well, I think that happens. That's a reality. All of those who are working in universities feel that some of their colleagues have lost their passion for science. As long as they do their profession in a good way, so as long as they teach well, they do their research, that's fine. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a little bit that you cannot force yourself to feel a passion for something. So if you have lost it, maybe you can feel, you think that something else would be much better for you, and you have the possibilities to switch, then do. If this is difficult in a certain age or in a certain position, then at least do your job in the best possible way and do your teaching well, value your people, and then most importantly, even if you don't feel the passion for science, don't stop the passion for science of young scientists. That's very important.
Okay. Another question we received through the chat is about mentors. How important are mentors in your?
I think they're very important. I'm not sure. So when I was young, I apologize very much for this. When I was young, there was practically no mentorship at all. I got a few mentorships, discussions. So I was a young postdoc when I was sitting in the cafeteria of a meeting, and a big shot asked whether he could sit beneath me and have a cup of coffee with me. And I said, of course, my pleasure. And my heart was throbbing because this was really a big shot. And he said, well, we all observe you and we all see how passionate you are with what you do. But let me tell you something. There is no place, at least in Germany, for the science you do. You're young. You could switch to a different topic. So switch to another topic. Otherwise, this will be very, very difficult for you. I was shocked and I was anxious. And then I realized that I love what I do so much that I'm taking the risk. And that was good. So mentorship can sometimes be wrong, but we try to be good mentors. So I'm mentoring my people and I'm also mentoring other people. And this is very valuable. But the person who is listening to a mentor should always keep his or her own opinion and his own sight on that and value the input, but at the same time, never forget about the own opinions that you have.
Mentorship is a two-way street. You can receive it, but many of the students at the Max Planck schools, they're working on PhDs, so there are many students who would look up to them as well. What are your tips to them for being or becoming a good mentor themselves?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure that I'm having a good answer to that. I would say the best way is to look beyond your own life, if ever possible. This is one of the most difficult things we humans can do because we are confined to our own life. But if you manage to think beyond your own life, beyond your own experiences, and incorporate the experiences of other people and try to feel with the other person who might tell you, I lost my passion for science, for example. And you have to cope with that. You have to feel with that person. Or I lost my hope, or I'm feeling torn between two alternatives. It's difficult to become a mentor, I think, and I'm not sure if I'm a good mentor. But that's, I would say, an important part of my job. And the best advice I can give for that is try to see the things beyond your own life and see them in a broader perspective.
Okay. There are two questions that are in the same vein. Science is not a 9-to-5 job. We hear from you passion and you have to work hard and you give it all. Does being a successful scientist genuinely mean absolute dedication and no free time?
No, it doesn't mean that. I have my free time and I have my research free time. I have my family, I have my friends. I go out, I get drunk, I sleep well, I sleep sometimes long. It's a great life. But for sure, I'm working much more than 9 to 5. That's at least true for me. And I do not know any scientist who is very successful who is working 9 to 5. I'm sure there are a couple of geniuses who can do that. And if you're one of them, great. Congratulations. But at least for me, this isn't possible. And this is not only not possible, at least for me, because all my life is dedicated to science, but many things are dedicated to the organization of science. I'm having a lot of people, so I'm having a lot of responsibility. I have to write letters of recommendation. I have to go through manuscripts. I have to read through manuscripts. I have to discuss with them about experiments. I have to mentor them. I have to talk about careers, etc., etc. So all of that is part of, let's say, the description of this profession, and that takes time. It would be egoistic to say I'm caring of my own science and I don't care of my people. That would be the wrong attitude. But if you try to do both, then it takes time.
At what point of your life were you sure that science was the only path you'd like to follow?
Well, at this episode, when I just started to think as a scientist or to feel as a scientist, when I was reading this diploma thesis and Xerox copying it, that was, I would say, the onset. But at the same time, and not to give a wrong impression on me, I'm not only a scientist, but also I'm a partner of a woman, and I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a relative, I'm a neighbor. There's so many different things in my life that's also fulfilling aspects. And that's also something that I really would like to stress. Live a full life. Be aware that science needs a lot of work, but never forget that a full circle of life implies so many different things. That's what I try to achieve. Sometimes I don't sleep enough for this, but that's worth it.
Let's do time travel together now, Onur, 25 years back. And you're meeting, of course, Onur Güntürkün. What of the things that you now know about science, your part in it, your life, what would you suggest to young Onur with all you know now?
I would suggest to learn more about being a boss. This sounds very bossy, the term boss, but when I was a very young professor, I thought that I could be a friend and at the same time the boss of the young people. That's very difficult. And because in the very end, you have to decide on contracts, you have to decide on grades, and that is not compatible with the position of a friend. To find a way to be more a partner than a boss, but at the same time being a scientist who's on very good relationships with the people in the lab, that was something that I needed a couple of years to learn. And there I really had needed mentorship from more elderly or more established colleagues. I wasn't very good in writing major papers. So I learned this really by scratch, by failures. So if you're in a lab where this is a part of the lab culture, cherish it. So this will give you so much more input because it's not only the result, it's also the way you write it, the way you frame it. All of that, the culture of writing a good paper is a very important culture. I learned it on the by the tough way. So cherish a lab culture where this is part of it.
What I hear from you is understand, accept clear boundaries once you start leading people, and 2, think very well about how you present your findings. Writing a good paper is not just about using the right jargon.
Yes. Exactly.
Onur, thank you so much for being with us, for sharing, and I would assume if there are more questions from young scientists that are joining the webcast today, they can ask you and they can turn to you for help.
Of course, always. Have a good time. Thank you so much.
Teşekkür ederim. Görüşürüz.
Görüşürüz.